Call this meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start with the approval of our minutes from the regular board meeting August 12th. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting in September 9th. August 12th, sorry.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve that meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. And then we will review the minutes of the annual meeting. We've all had a chance to do that. Everything look okay to you guys?
That's good.
All right, that doesn't require a motion, I guess, so we'll move on to our monthly transactions. The approval of the general fund vouchers 81,606 through 81,659 and wire transfers 2024-06-49 through 2025-0027. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the general fund vouchers and wire transfers as read.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the general fund vouchers as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Next item of business is public comment sections. Anybody here that would like to share anything in the public comments section? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item of business, which is the spotlight on education. And tonight we'll be hearing from our Clear Lake Community Education update.
All right, Wendy, welcome.
Thanks for having me. My name is Wendy Scoggins, and I am the Community Ed Coordinator. I don't know what my title is. So I brought some stuff for you to kind of share with you. I could have been on the screen, but I thought this was more personal or something. So let me just read the little blurb about that I've been promoting on Facebook and in person. We have everything from an upscale meal and a show at Chanhassen to foraging for your food in the wild. From quilting, crochet and crafts to hunter safety, steam, robots, succulents and scam prevention, and lots more. We even have a mommy and me craft night planned. So we have about, let's see, 16 classes scheduled for, well, on the books right now. 2 of them are actually next summer. The rest are this fall. And about 12 more in the works. I put out a questionnaire and got a lot of response, really good response. Not only you should do this, but also this person could teach it, or I could teach it, or whatever. So it was a kind of a snowball effect. The reason that I kind of went from doing DNR classes to having a million classes is partially because the homecoming tailgate supper is our fundraiser. And so I felt like if I was going to ask the clubs and businesses in Clear Lake to sponsor and help, I should probably have a catalog. So I did make a catalog last spring, but this one is bigger. So this is the catalog, and I'll pass this around. Basically, I'm sorry, you can't see. Basically, there's just a lot of fun classes, and we are, I think today the deposit went down for Chanhassen. We're going to go see Greece the day after Valentine's Day. They introduced that at the senior luncheon at the community center, I think it was last month, and 10 people signed up for, sign-ups weren't even open yet, but they want to go. So a lot of interest and excitement there. Okay. Our first class starts Thursday, and it's for grades 1 through 3, and they will be learning about the life cycle of a caterpillar to butterfly. We actually have a mascot caterpillar. I don't know what his name is, but we'll name him. So they're going to do 6, 7, 8 different crafts. I don't know what it is. A whole bunch of fun things. It costs $25, and right now there are 3 people confirmed for it. So we do have a minimum of 4, but I think we'll just go for it as this kind of rolls out. I think more people are going to get more interested in and more aware of it. So let's see, we have, like I said, we have the Succulent Fest. We have a quilting club that will meet every other week, ongoing. We have a crochet class, which is every other week for a couple of months. Foraging, which Matt's going to go to. And Little Engineers, which is our most popular class right now. Super fun. It's learning about steam through programming, a robot. That's also great. So, back to my homecoming tailgate. Basically, I have 3 sponsors right now, and I'm reaching out to different clubs. They're sponsoring and or like cooking and serving and stuff. So I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on that, probably because of the big catalog. Do you guys have any questions? You gonna sign up?
Thank you.
That foraging one, is that like mushrooms and everything, berries, everything else that you can nuts?
Been shared on Facebook.
I think you need a bigger button on our district
I can't
page.
hear, so if you're asking me something.
Need a bigger button on our
You gotta yell at
district
me.
page.
What's that?
Need a bigger
We
button.
need to
on
give you
it.
more space on the district page.
Oh, there you
That
go.
looks great.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have added a bunch of information. There's a calendar, there's a catalog, there's links to sign up, and thanks to Eve and her tireless work and fighting with these people, she figured out how that we can actually accept credit card payments online. So
That'll help.
is a big deal.
And on the website note too, Matt, that's a good point, because when we redid our website last year, we talked about that, and we kind of said, we're going to give Wendy a chance to get things established a little bit more, and then, yeah, we're looking to add another drop-down tab on there, so it goes right to community ed instead of community, then community ed. So, yeah. So.
Definitely.
Wendy's also been helping with, well, she's been assisting with our social media stuff, with Facebook. She's got some background in that, so she's been giving some input and some ideas with that. Just kind of in the background and maybe more. But yeah, the classes that she's got going are for all ages, little kids up to seniors and everything in between. And so we've been working through some of the logistics of, payments and insurance and things, and background checks on, and we're very happy to do it because it's exciting to see, the program kind of having a little renaissance and getting more activity going in it. So that's things we're happy to work on. So it's good. Great stuff. So.
Very good, Wendy. It's nice to
Thank you.
see all this stuff going on.
I don't remember,
It seems
did
like people are
you
enjoying
place
it.
this in the newspaper too, or
I'm sorry.
did you place any of this in the newspaper too?
Yeah, actually, last month the entire catalog was in there. It was sort of hard to read it, I thought, but yeah. So, and she puts that all in for nothing. Like is very generous with that. So, yeah, awesome.
Oh, sorry. Good job, Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's good to see it grow.
Oh, yes. All right. Anybody have any other questions for Wendy? Thank you very much, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to our board business here. The first is our approval of resignations.
We just have a co-curricular resignation. Shauna Peterson was an assistant cheerleading coach last year, and this summer, at the end of the summer, she turned in her resignation. She's not going to continue with that. So.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resignations.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business are our hires.
Okay, so it's always exciting when we have more hires than resignations to talk about. So some of the Late summer hires since our last meeting. K-12 vocal music and general music teacher is Stephanie Solberg. And then we have our elementary evening custodian. We hired Stephanie Norris for that. We're happy to hire her. We're happy to bring Brooklyn Tolsman as a C-squad volleyball coach. And then for the assistant cheer and dance coach that you just heard about, Jamie Van Hooklam. She's our counselor at the elementary school. She's agreed to help with that here for the fall, just for the fall portion, and see where it goes from there. So.
All right, well, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the new hires.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to approve our new hires. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is our strategic plan scorecard review, Pillar 1.
Okay, so I'm going to turn on the screen here, and the principals are going to do the majority of the talking here. This part, the principals and Mrs. Powers, our special ed director, and I'm going to get us wired up here so we can all be looking kind of at the same thing at once. So this is the beginning of what this process should look like down the road as we now implement our strategic plan and take it to action and use the scorecards that you've heard about in the gallery walks. And now, there we go. As we take it from development of the scorecard to now implementation of the scorecard, and we're setting goals and we have our metrics that we're using and our strategies we're using, these will be our periodic check-ins on the different aspects and the different pillars. It always does this. Just the input. Okay, so, and I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but if you recall, we talked about our, how did I get logged out? No? Okay. Our strategic plan board calendar. Our plan for reviewing the scorecards is to check in on different aspects of them at different points in the year. So it's not just one big, hey, let's sit down for 2.5 hours and talk through all the scorecards. It's, we're going to check in on this in September, and this in October, and this in January, and so that's how this looks. So I'll look at that calendar with you next. But anyway, our aspects of the scorecard that we're looking at specifically is the forward testing, pre-ACT testing and ACT testing. When we talked about it in July, in August, we didn't have that data ready for you yet. So we're going to start with the elementary, right? So
yes.
And then you want to start with SNP 2, right?
Yes.
Yep, SNP number 2. I just took pictures of those scorecards so we can keep it simpler here. So.
All right, so we've kind of talked about FastBridge. That's that 3 times a year test that is given throughout the elementary. So this is data that's already been out there for a little while. We are focusing on forward, but this is how we kind of gauge how our students, in a sense, how we can predict their success on the forward exam, which is that state exam that all students 3rd grade in the elementary, 3rd grade through 6th grade will take. So our goal for the FastBridge, we won't stick too much on FastBridge, was to decrease the students scoring below the 30th percentile on the reading portion by 6%. So we came in the fall with a 37%, and now we'll be taking this again. So this next scorecard is going to be empty, and we'll start filling it in. But we did not decrease by the 6%. We got, for our reading, we decreased that number of students by 2%. For math, we decreased by 4%, getting closer to that decrease goal. And then we'll go to SNP 1, doing it kind of backwards just to talk FastBridge together, and then end with forward, which is our focus.
So that number was last fall's number?
So the first...
The 37%?
This is from fall of 23.
Yep, September of 23,
Okay.
and then January 24, and May
here.
of 24.
And so we're looking for the number to go down.
Right.
And we've learned through the process of the goals that, 6% is a pretty ambitious goal.
So when we talk about 6% goal, are we talking to last year or to our new fall scores?
That was from fall to spring. The goal was 6%.
Right, but we're gonna get new fall scores, right?
And then they'll start new.
So is our 6% goal gonna be 6% less than fall or 6% less than last summer?
So what we'll do, is it okay, Ms. Peterson? It's a fresh group of students, we're gonna get their baseline, and then we'll make our goal from that. So really, the card in a fast bridge scenario here, that spring score was our stoplight then for last year. We'll start off in the fall, and certainly we want that number to be single digits. I mean, that in that, the students scoring that 30%
Sure.
or below.
So we'll reset that goal then after fall?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
you got it.
Yep, good question.
sorry.
Nope.
Oh, anything else, questions on this before we?
I was listening to public radio the other day, and they were talking about these state test scores and the fact that a number of years ago they moved the goalposts on us and made all this harder. Like the test scoring was more difficult, or the kids as the whole state scored lower. Well, now they're talking about moving the goalposts back again. Have they done that here yet, or are we still on the plane of the last 3 years?
This is still the old harder, I would
Okay.
say, cut scores, they call them, yeah. Right? Am I wrong? Or am I right?
No.
talking fast bridge or with?
I'm talking forward.
I think it's
Forward.
Those are the new cuts.
Oh, these are the new cut scores.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
The-
All right. Yep,
the
you're right. Yeah,
spring
duh.
one.
That's right. Yep. I can't believe I asked that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So we'll briefly just highlight the fast bridge and then get into the real content. So there's two portions of the fast bridge test. One is a student directed, they just read, they do their own kind of work. There's maybe some sight words that come up. It just kind of levels them based on what they know. The other portion is a teacher-student portion where it's a timed reading, or for math, it's kind of an automaticity. How quick are they learning these facts type thing. So this is the other portion of that test. Now this is written in a different kind of format. It isn't a decrease. We had goals. 70% of students, K1, will meet the grade level benchmark, or 65% second through sixth. You cannot compare the K through 1 with 2 through 6. They're completely different types of assessments. And honestly, as we think about kindergarten, what they take in the fall is completely different what they take in the winter, and completely different what they take in the spring. It's, do you know your letters? Then it's, can you read these words? And then it's, it just progresses. Where second through sixth grade is kind of a consistent test. You're seeing kind of the same things. You're just then, as the year goes on, that cut score or that percentile, is on an upward trajectory, because we want our students to be doing that same thing. So kindergarten and first grade are quite unique. I would say kindergarten really is quite unique. They do not test the same things. Obviously, if they tested alphabet in fall, alphabet in winter, and alphabet in spring, they would be sky high. But it is alphabet, then it's maybe sounds, and then it's words. It moves quick, it's challenging. But, so we have some growth to do in reading, which these scorecards have really been a good magnifying glass, I guess, to places that we really can focus in on. Our math, we had some high goals of 80% meeting benchmark for our youngest students and 70% for our second through sixth graders. So we do have some pretty great scores. I would say we came in pretty high with the number of students reaching a benchmark level on this kind of test that, again, 3 times a year, a little bit of a potential predictor for the forward. So if we look at the forward, kind of what Mr. Frenchu was referencing, the fall score was last year's forward, so 2023. We knew coming into 2024 that the format of the forward test had changed. They had eliminated one of the ELA portions. It was a really big writing portion called text-dependent analysis, and they made it into smaller writing responses. So the whole state was in the same boat of this kind of new test type thing, and it did delay our scores. They're in the mail, or maybe will be in the mail this week, just because the state itself was working on getting everything scored. But as we see, we wanted to, and this was a pretty lofty goal, but that's how I like to do things, aim high, and I think our kids can reach it. But we wanted to have the number of 3rd through 6th grade students scoring proficient or better on the ELA portion. We wanted that to increase by 10%. We did. Again, last year's test is very different than this year's test, so your NPR discussion may have something to do with this, but this is where our kids scored, so we are going to also claim that that is where we are. Nearly 50% of our students scored proficient or better on the forward exam. Same for the math portion, wanted to increase that by 10%. Nearly got there. And we're just, I think, excited to see now that this shows us maybe some gaps, we can fill those and see some really good scores as we continue through and make new goals now for the 24-25 scorecard.
I think one of the takeaways through this process too has been, and we've talked about this repeatedly when we've been working on it, is, going through it, last year this was really about building the scorecard, but still we were tracking data and setting goals, and we've learned a lot about the goal setting process of a 10% growth was probably a little bit overly ambitious goal, and we used that goal setting document, if you guys remember, that Dr. Sarin had given us. And that's, so we didn't just make the goals up out of nowhere. It's like what's considered to be an ambitious goal or a moderate goal or a fairly small goal based on the population size of kids you're using and so on. So we try to, use the guideline there. We're not just trying to make stuff up. But 10% is pretty ambitious. But yeah, that's we're learning. We're going to continue fine tuning this every year as we go too, setting better goals. Any questions about the elementary stuff?
I think at the end of the year, it'd be neat to see almost like a balance sheet where you have fall, mid, end of year for 2023, 24, going forward, where you can compare a little bit that way too.
Well, and when we do, usually in November, December, we'll get the actual the state report cards, and we usually kind of try to, that bigger picture of historical, like you say, because that's me. I like to look at the historical part, look back 10 years. What's it doing over 10 years? I agree. That's always interesting. All right, Mr. Melbourne?
I'm ready.
Okay. You want snip 1 or 2 first? Or?
Snip 1 should be foster high levels of learning for all, I believe. Yeah. I'm going to just walk you through as a reminder. We did some of this on the gallery walk, but just start with the left-hand column. As Mrs. Anderson said, those are the goals that we set for the year last fall, or when we started this process. And if you start at the top, it starts with our junior class, and then we've got it broken down by class going down. So our junior class goal is based on the ACT. Our last year's sophomore and freshman, that goal is based on the pre-ACT secure, and then the 7th and 8th grade is based much like the elementary school on the forward exam. So we set goals per class, and then moving across, you see the strategies, and this is, okay, so how are we what high confidence strategy are we gonna use to try and move the needle to make sure that we're achieving the goal of trying to meet the state average on the ACT and the pre-ACT? And then down to, with the 7th and 8th graders, how do we move more kids into meeting the expectations or meeting the benchmark on the forward exam? And so, much like the elementary school, with our 7th and 8th graders, we implemented, for the first time last year for us, the Fast Bridge in 7th and 8th grade. And you can see that we didn't even get that implemented in time to do it with the English portion of it, but we got it going by winter, and we had math all the way across. So we take that Fast Bridge, and then we use that data to, the teachers will break into teams, and we give them a half a day to dig into that data and set strategies, start to identify areas that we need to grow in, and put strategies in place that we can do between fall testing and winter testing to try and get the growth that we're looking for. And then we use the PLC process in the meantime to track whether we're making that progress or not. And then the same thing with the ACT and the pre-ACT, but instead of FastBridge, we purchased CERT last year, and that is it is a program that allows us to test the kids 3 times, and it ties everything not only to ACT questions, but it ties it to all the Wisconsin state standards. So when the staff looks at the data, if we use ELA as an example, every question on the CERT exam is always a question that has been used or is similar to something that was used on a previous ACT, and it's tied to Wisconsin state standard. So we can identify standards that we're struggling with a group of students, whether it's the juniors or the freshmen, and then the staff, the English department in this case, can make strategies or put strategies together in the meantime to try and attack those areas, and then use the PLC process in the weeks between fall and winter testing and winter and spring testing to make sure that we're checking in and making that progress towards it. And so that kind of gives you an idea. So now we're going to get all the way over to the right side. And so those 3 columns, if we start with the juniors on the top, and I know that's going to be tough to read up there, but it tracks it across. So the juniors in the fall, you can see their fall CERT tests, and then we look for growth in the winter, and then we're trying to hit that goal with our lagging indicator, which is the actual ACT score. So any score that you see in green, we met the goal, and the goal was to meet the state average or meet or exceed the state average. In yellow, we came up short, but it's within 2 percentage points of meeting the goal. So we're right there. We're 1/10 of the point off in a lot of those yellow ones, and then the red is one that we didn't meet the goal on. But if you can see on that red one, where we started with that group of students in the fall was a score of 13. We moved it to 15 in the winter, and then on our lagging indicator on the pre-ACT, it got to 16.9. I told the staff at one of our first meetings that if we can get half that growth out of that group of kids again, we'll be far above the state average for this coming year. So even though we didn't get there, I'm pretty excited about the growth that we saw with that one. Scrolling down just a little bit, Mr. Peterson, is the junior high kids are measured a little bit differently, and that is our goal was to increase the number of junior high students scoring the meeting expectations, or I should say meeting benchmark or better on the ELA, and then on the math as well. And you can see in 2023 on the forward exam for 7th and 8th grade, both ELA and math, we had 37% of our students that were meeting it or better, and we jumped that significantly. Now, as Greg mentioned with the conversation you heard on the radio, Mrs. Anderson mentioned what they're telling us with the forward exam right now is it's tough to compare last year's scores to this year's scores, but we didn't know that when we set all this up. So that part of it is a little frustrating. But at the same time, I know that we have more kids learning at a higher level based on this, so we're pretty excited about that. Questions on the first part?
I think it would be nice if we could see what the state average actually is.
I was thinking the same thing.
I'm I trust your numbers,
Yep.
but it is nice to actually see what you're comparing it
And I've
to.
got them all handwritten here, Christy, but I know that's not helping you. Because I thought
That's not
you might
at
have some
all.
of those questions of okay, so we hit this, but what is it?
Yes.
What type of math is typically taken in sophomore year?
What do our sophomores take? Most of them take ELG 2.
One of the things
Is that
too,
one of the curriculums that we updated?
No, we had it integrated 1 and 2, but Algebra 2 Algebra 2 used to be taken by juniors more so years ago. We used to go Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and then about 3-4 years ago, like before you got here.
Before me.
We've gotten more Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and then Geometry, and the thinking was that kids were not getting some Algebra 2 things in time for the ACT their junior year, and so that was the thinking behind it. We're still sorting out whether we like it.
It's tough. So the ACT has a lot of Alg 2 on it, and so the thought process was, well, let's get a whole year of Alg 2 in. I think what we're finding is, math is one of those things, if you're not using it, you're losing it. And I think what we're finding is, when it was fresh in the kids' mind, when they took the ACT, even though they hadn't been through an entire year of it, maybe that was better than them having that 1 year gap of when they finish it and when they actually take the ACT. So we're not sure what the right decision there is yet.
One of the things about this, a lot of this data for both buildings was, so we're pushing to, staff's coming back in August, and we got scorecards coming, so, we're trying to pull data before it really was fully out there. So in some cases, some of the teachers at the elementary were coming in, going through individual score sheets and tracking the data to try to figure out the results. And because it was a little delayed this year with the changes in the test, so it wasn't in WiseDash as quick as we normally like it. So same thing with some of Mr. Melberg's stuff too. He was kind of going through with the ACT results and kind of hand figuring it, some of it against. So, because that's exactly right, Christy. Is it's nice to look at or like you're saying too, Matt, the longitudinal data and the averages too. And I think again, maybe when we have state report card time, maybe we can look a little bit at more of that data, that macro data too. So.
And the other part of the scorecard too is, it's designed to be on our website for the public to see. So trying to figure out what's easy to look at and read and without too much information on there. But I agree with you, it'd be nice to have those on there, and we can figure out a way to do that. One thing I wanted to point out, if you look at our juniors and seniors across the board, I'm very happy with, we went with CERT, we looked at a few different companies last year, and if you look, their prediction was pretty spot on with our juniors and our sophomores on what they would get on the ACT and the pre-ACT. It's a little off with the freshmen. I've got a couple theories on that. One of those is that I coddled them too much, in that we broke up their testing a little bit, and that test it's a bear, and so all of a sudden they were put into a situation where they had 4 straight hours of testing. The juniors and sophomores had done that a few times with the CERT, and we had broken it up with the freshmen, so I'm not sure if that contributed to it, or the pre-ACT is relatively new if CERT just doesn't have that freshman test dialed in yet. So we'll keep working with it.
It was really neat to see how correlated it was, though.
Yeah.
Because, fall and winter, this is a different assessment than this is. But look how, it's so tight, how close it is.
I will say also that if you remember, I talked about at the annual meeting, we started what we call win time with math last year in the junior high. Kids getting an extra 20 minutes a week of just skills, math skills, and broken into small groups. And we're doing now this year, we're doing it with English and math, and I think that's making a difference. And some kids are getting 40 minutes of that a week, so I'm excited about that change. Do the next one, Chris.
Growth.
Yep. So this one's really focused on a lot more of our group are struggling learners, and making sure that not only are we trying to get high achievement with these scores, but we're also focused on some of our kids that are struggling learners, to what are we doing to identify who these kids are by face, by name, and putting plans in place to make sure that that they're not getting, that gap's not growing. We want to close that gap and bring those kids along, and that's where a lot of the win time that I just talked about comes into play. But this goal is really focused on reducing the achievement gap between our high achievers and our struggling learners. And I think, again, tough with the change to moving the goalpost, but we saw some great things here. So We wanted to reduce the achievement gap number of high school students going below approaching on the pre-ACT and ACT, so I lumped them all together in this one. And then on the forward exam for both math and ELA, how do we identify who those kids are, get them the supports that they need in order to do better on these assessments and bring them along. And you'll see that I did put last year's scores just as a reference point on the left-hand side. So we had 33%, 24%, 27% scoring below that mark, and we shrunk that to 20%, 16%, and 14%. So we moved, by we, I mean the teachers, really moved the needle with a number of kids to help achieve those goals. Any questions on that one?
Don's going to talk about the special education department score. Don, do you want SNP 1 or 2 first?
I didn't do SNP 2.
Well, it's just, I couldn't fit it all on one page, so that's all. It's just the bottom part.
Gotcha.
I was
like, actually, I meant something. I'm like, SNP 2. Why should only have SNP 1? Let's start with SNP 1.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So with SNP, with this, if we look at the goal for the special ed goal, kind of across the board was to go by what we did with our IDA continuous progress monitoring. Our goal for the state for the special ed department, which was the overall goal was, to 15% or more elementary students with disabilities will increase their level of proficiency by 1 level on the forward ELA by the end of the 2024-2025 school year. So this is still a year out before this goal would be done. And then same thing for math. So if we look, looking at Fastbridge in the fall, 8% reading, 25% math of our students where they were to where they increased. And then mid-year, we had 19% reading and 42% math of our students with special needs that made an increase there. And I'm sorry, I have a typo. I said reading. It should say ELA forward. And on the ELA forward portion for grades 3 through 6, we had 20% of our special needs students who increased a proficiency level from last year to this year. Or I should say from 2020, or the 23 exam to the 24 exam. And then for math, same thing, they did meet that. They went up, they got above the 15% or more. We had 26% of our special needs students, grades 3 through 6, gain 1 level in their proficiency. So they went either from 2 years ago it was called below basic, and then this year it was called developing. Those are kind of the same levels. So like we would have kids that were performing in the below basic, and then they moved into the approaching category. So they kind of shifted that way.
So you guys have seen before, like on the forward test, it's a 4, 3, 2, or 1. So they change the words as Dawn's explaining, but like it's a student who moves from a 1 to a 2 or a 2 to a 3. It's basically what we're trying, moving up a level.
Well, yeah.
The wording is confusing now. I can't keep track of what means what.
So one of the things that I then kind of dug into with all those kids like 3 through 6 was I looked at their test percentile from one year to the other to kind of look to see how much they were gaining. And I mean, we had a lot of kids that were, might have had like a test percentile of like the 8th percent, and then they jumped to like the 22nd percent. So I mean, we were able to show growth. I was able to look at growth that way. So I did a little bit more digging. Mine's a little bit more. It's a little different than Mrs. Anderson's or Mr. Melberg's, because I'm looking at each individual student going from one year to the next to see how much they've progressed. And then, so then if we look at the junior high, In the fall on Fastbridge, we had 0% that, with the reading, they were all kind of very low. In the middle of the year, on the Fastbridge, they increased to 30% in reading. And then for the forward, it should say ELA, again, I put reading there, I don't know why. They were at 11%. And again, I have a couple theories on that, but just knowing the group of kids and things like that, it doesn't totally surprise me that they didn't quite make it.
Well, and
But-
different measures too. This is
Right.
Fastbridge and this is forward. So.
But I also look at 11%, and if our goal was to 15% by the end of the 24-25 school year, they are making progress towards that. And then math, they did really well. 22% of the students with special needs increased a proficiency level on the forward from one year to the next. So I thought that was very good. Our senior high kids, I have it broken down to the pre-ACT and then the ACT. And so, they had the cert real late in the fall last year. And for the 9th and 10th graders, they were increasing kind of across the board, except for reading was kind of hit and miss. And for us, there's a limited number of students. And so like if you have, 1 or 2 that hit it, so like that 8% in the fall was probably 1 student out of all of our kids. And then, so then that 1 student in mid-year, still, something happened and they didn't test as well. But if we look at their pre-ACT scores in, at the end of the year, both in ELA and in math, they both increased. So they both kind of attained that 15% or more. So I was happy to see that. 11th grade ACT, I'm going to readjust, because I said 20% or more junior students with disabilities. That's a pretty lofty goal when you only have like 4 kids that are taking it of students with disabilities in 11th grade to try and shift that to really see actual growth. So I'll probably look at more of their scores and percentage that they're increasing on their scores rather than trying to go a different level, because it's just harder to see the growth, because a lot of times that below college ready versus college ready, there's a big, kind of, what do I want to say? There's just, you're below college ready or you're college ready. It's kind
There's
of
no 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a line.
right. And they're, I can dig a little bit more. So I'm gonna change that goal for this coming year for them, because it just didn't quite fit for them. But one thing that I did get to see was of our students with disabilities, of those 4, 2 of them increased their reading score. But even though they increased their reading score, it didn't change their over level proficiency score. So, does that make sense?
And like they're taking the same pre-ACT and ACT
As everybody else.
Mhm.
And, with our students with disabilities, that's, that includes students that have emotional disabilities, students that have learning disabilities, students that have intellectual disabilities, so you have the whole gambit. It's not, so some of our students have some more challenges to overcome than other students do, whether it's behavior or, intellectual, or, just their learning disability on how they take things in.
I can speak for my son, and there's a point where they peak. It's difficult to get much further.
Yeah, it just depends. So, speaking of your son, I look at some of his stuff.
Make sure we don't talk about any individuals, Dawn.
He did,
Yep, it's
he did that
recorded.
himself. I can show you later, but.
Um,
Yeah, so there's that. So
Well, yeah, that's one of the takeaways from the process is just, the best way to track the goal. Is it to, like Dawn's had some good reflection on, is it to track moving up a level, or is it to track just general growth of their score? Because there's some nice growth to show, but it's not showing up in the goal. So those are just that's the good dialogue we're just having around all this.
So do you guys reserve the right to change what your goals and strategies are along the way to have your discussions reflect more what they need to?
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I
every year
think-
when we do a scorecard, I think, we can look at
And we'll
the
do-
goals and
we'll
see
do-
what we,
We'll do the winter testing, and we might find that, hey, we set this goal too high, we can't get there, we need to adjust, and we need to adjust our strategies, or we're gonna hit this goal easily, we need to move that bar out a little bit.
I would even think class sizes are gonna have effect on percentages as that
Oh, for
moves
sure.
through.
Yep.
Even here.
Yeah,
and
especially
and for,
with
and for,
yours, Donna.
and for special ed, I mean, some years I might have, at a sophomore level, there might be 4 kids, other years there might be 7. It just depends, which then, we have to kind of look overall, looking at, the juniors. Last year, we had 4 students. That's really hard to see a lot of growth with 4 students.
that's why we want to, kind of the continual check-ins with the board. Then if we change a goal, then you can see that. We can say, hey, we adjusted this goal and here's why, so it's transparent. Or, we're realizing that it's not working, or the strategy's changing because it's not working.
So do these sped numbers affect Brian's numbers too?
Yes,
They're-
so all of
they're
our
included
special ed
in
students
your-
are included in both Teresa and Brian's numbers too. So SNP 2, that was where I was like, I didn't get that in there.
That was
But-
just the bottom part of the fast, bottom part of the promote growth part.
Yes.
This is more of the, well, go ahead, Dawn.
So yeah, so like I didn't get my data in the fall, but they were all moving towards it. They were moving towards their goal. I just don't know. I blanked out on putting the end stuff in there.
Well, it wasn't a goofy spot, yeah, sorry.
So that was my fault, so I apologize for that, but I can easily get that in there in the next couple days here.
And then the district scorecard, this was actually stoplighted in July when we looked at it, because the district scorecard is based on FastBridge. So we did have FastBridge data in the spring, and so we just did Brad would call it kind of a dipstick. You dipstick 3rd grade for reading and 8th grade for math, and that's just you track that over in the long haul, and it's kind of a good gauge of how things are going. One thing that we've learned too, so we did the district scorecard first, and then we did the other ones as we're going, and one thing we realized, and he shared this later as an insight that he had when he's been doing this for many years, but that make sure that your district scorecard is reflective of what the building scorecards are below that a little bit. And so ours, we'll see how ours aligns, because if you have a district scorecard that has a bunch of yellows and reds, but then your building scorecards are greens, well then then we should be changing how we're tracking the district one, I guess. But I mean, we're happy with what we're, 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math are that's a lot of what often the state report cards look at too heavily. So that 3rd grade reading is for some statistical analysis, is a very good predictor of high school graduation. So for whatever reason, there's research behind that. It's beyond me, but we looked at this in July actually when we did ours. But I just wanted to make sure that that the district overall one was up here too. But this is more of the CERT data from fall, winter, spring, which also follows what you hear when you do the AGR report too. And we did, 6% increases. Those are examples of fairly aggressive goals, actually. So, I don't know if there's any questions about this one. So that is what this process should look like going forward. Is every few months, we'll dive in. And so this is sort of us kind of closing out 23, 24 sort of, because we got to wait for this data. We couldn't show it to you in July because we didn't have it. So this is us kind of closing out 23, 24.
Can I say one thing,
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson? So at in-service this year, I mean, again, the staff has been kind of watching us build this and, has been a part of it, certainly, but we didn't have the end product until we had the end product. So I think, too, we spent some time looking through each, special ed scorecard, the high school scorecard, the district scorecard, and certainly spent a lot of time in the elementary one, where now they're understanding and seeing that picture and that ownership of it, that we have been building it with their input, but now I think it's certainly becoming more of a foundational piece for our staffs to really understand, oh, okay, now we know, let's go forward. So I think that was a good kind of aha time this fall.
And for being the DAC, this year normally we get the student copies and everything into the district at the end of July. We literally didn't get mailed any of the forward stuff for parents until July or September 27th. So a little over a week ago. August 27th. Sorry, I said September 27th. I meant August 27th. So yeah, so a little bit over a week ago. So hopefully next year, maybe we'll have them in July and we'll have a little bit, the other data. We'll be able to, scorecard wise, look at stuff a little sooner. I don't know, depending on what we think of.
It would be interesting to see the high school and elementary scores without the special ed, because if you're rolling it all up into the district level, then you'd roll all three together and put it that way, because I think you also want to look at how are you handling we're really digging into the special ed, but how are you doing with the non-special ed population, and where are they sitting with their standards?
Well, and I'll add a third group in there because our virtual learners are
Yeah.
that group.
I'm just kind of wondering how those groups are doing from a teaching perspective.
And so when we look at Wise Dash, we can, as administrators, we can look and we can break it down. We can just look at students without disabilities, students with disabilities. You can look at our ELL too, if I remember correctly, that we can
break it out by gender.
And I'm not sure, we can break it down and analyze it and share it. But I'm not sure that would be something we would want to put on a scorecard.
No, I'm just saying it would be
Absolutely.
for our conversation. If we're looking at different populations, you would want to take a look at every population. Right now, we're just really taking a deep dive on the special ed population.
Well, one of the reasons,
so I think I could make a case for what kids should be in the building.
General ed setting.
No, well, in the building and not.
And not virtual.
Yeah, I think but those are things that if you're not looking at those populations, you're not going to see those trends.
and one of the reasons there's so much focus on special education is because of trying to close the gaps in the state. And when we look at our data, which in the past has not always been what we wanted it to be, and we've seen that that's such a big area of potential growth for us, that we've had such a small number of kids reaching proficiency or basic. I'm using the old term, sorry. That we realize if we could move our special ed students up just one notch, it would just dramatically increase our report cards and be doing the right thing for closing those gaps for those students.
And just all the years I've been in special ed, it takes time. It's not, for our students, it takes them longer to learn. It's not just something that a lot of the kids just don't necessarily gain the same amount in a year as a student without a disability. But our goal is for them to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for reference to that, what you just said, I mean, my son just went through testing and he's a junior testing at a first grade reading level, and to move that, that little bit, sometimes it does take a lot, and I get that.
There's that philosophical approach too of, having all students take the ACT test and the appropriateness of that. And we can certainly question that, because I certainly do at times, that's for sure. And the one thing though too we do come back to is that all the schools are in the same boat, so it is apples to apples.
Right.
We know, not that we're supposed to compare to other schools, but that's ultimately what happens when we look at state average, you know. But yeah, that's the whole philosophy of all the testing too.
And we do have some parents with students with special needs that they opt them out of testing. But we have some general ed students, parents that also opt them out of testing too. It's just whatever the parents prefer.
Then we get penalized if too many people do that.
Yes, then we can penalize if too many people opt out.
Ultimate federal oversight is where we, on the one hand, we get docked for too many students opting out, and then on the other hand, we also get docked in other ways with oversight if we don't disclose and put on our website to all parents that they can opt their students out. It's one of those
I think one of the reasons
unique
that
logic
we
there.
penalize
Does anybody
is
have any
we don't
other?
want all the special ed students out.
Does anybody have any other questions before we move on?
I'll say I think this is great to go through this. I think it'd be neat going forward to get in some type of rotation where maybe each time we're here, we're going through one of the pillars. You know, it'd be neat to see pillar 2 next time.
It's a perfect segue, Matt.
Yeah, that's exactly
Okay.
what it is. There is our
Great.
schedule.
Great.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if it's okay, if I can move on to the next
Yep.
agenda item. So the planning, strategic planning calendar, this is the working calendar that we're using. That's just related to strategic plan with the board. Well, not just with the board. The part that is in blue is the board reports, okay? So like back in August, you know, we talked about the fund balance. You know, we talked about, you know, at the annual meeting, we gave an overview of the facility projects that have gone on. We did budget review and preview at the annual meeting. Fund balance, we talked about that. I guess that was August and the annual meeting. We basically did those things. Here in September, now tonight, you know, so how did we develop this calendar? So what we did is we looked through all of our strategy maps and looked through all of our scorecards, and we mapped it all up literally on that whiteboard last year. We said, okay, what are all the things we're measuring and when? And we, you know, went month by month, and we just threw it all up there when it all happens. And then we just sort of looked at the trends and said, okay, what happens in the fall? What are the things we can scorecard in September and October? And that's how we developed this. So so then looking ahead is here in October, at our October meeting, we'd come back and talk about part of Pillar 1, which is leading indicators related to student engagement. And also that's where we'd come back and look at our 24-25 card now and say, okay, we got our fall CERT, our fall fast bridge, and we're setting our goals here. So that's a peek ahead now in October at Pillar 1 again. And then Pillar 2, this is I lied before, 23-24, the very last, looking backwards. I'm going to share our retention rate, staff retention rate for Pillar 2. That's an easy one. In January, we'll come back and we'll talk about Pillar 3, career and technical education, and also look at our fund balance leading indicators, check in on the budget. And then Pillar 4, that should be under Pillar 4, the fund balance leading indicators. And then Pillar 4, just kind of a look ahead facility plan review. So we've got our priorities, and that's January. We're looking at, looking ahead to summer projects, things like that. So that's kind of the check-in on facilities for Pillar 4. Go to February, back to Pillar 1, which is the one we hit the most. So Pillar 1 in February, you're going to hear about the AGR report, but that's when we'll talk about fast bridge data, how fall to winter. And the CERT data, fall to winter. Now you're going to start to see this one here, AIMS, something called AIMS Web. So this is related to Act 20. So if you've seen school news about Act 20, the new reading law, so they've now mandated for grades K through 3 that all schools need to use the same screener. So right now some of us use FastBridge, some of us use STAR, some of us use AIMS Web. They've mandated that all schools will use AIMS Web. So throw this monkey wrench into our plan too. We now have to use for K through 3 AIMS Web for our reading and literacy testing. So we as a district are looking at that to figure out going forward, are we going to use then Ames Web all the way up through 8th grade for literacy? Are we going to use their math up through 8th grade? Because, you know, do we want to have one vendor for reading and one vendor for math? So you can see it's a perpetual look at, okay, what are we going to continue doing? You know, we're using our 3rd year of FastBridge, right? This is our 3rd year? 4th year? 3rd year?
Third year. Fourth
year.
Because
Fourth year of
it started
FastBridge.
the
It was
year
my
before I
last
came
year
back.
over there we started. So, you know, so there's some frustration there too with the changes that come to us from above sometimes. So, you know, February 2, we'll look at Pillar 2, which is staff, and talk about some of our leading indicators for staff retention strategies, which is stay interviews, which is checking in with our staff, especially some of our newer staff. That's been done. Then we come back then we have a little bit of a break there with board reports till we get to spring then. We'll talk about Fund 46. I found that's when we tend to talk about Fund 46 and kind of looking ahead at what's our balance, what are some projects for summer. Kind of doing a projection for year end. And then in June, we'll have some of that year end data, some of the Pillar 1 engagement surveys, like Zello and Career and Tech Ed stuff will be finalized. We can stoplight it. Retention rate as a leading indicator. We'll have the staff survey review if we continue doing some of the surveys that we've been doing from school perceptions. That would also fit at the end of the year, hopefully in June, to look at that. So we want to have this cycle where we're hitting the different pillars at different times of the year. Exactly what you're saying, Matt. I don't know that definitely every month, but you know, we kind of found that certain things kind of flowed with certain, I guess, kind of the way things happen or the way the calendar lays out. So I'm excited about that part of
it. Good stuff. All right. Ready to move on then, Chris?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, we'll move on to our next item of business, discussion of process to consider 8-player football for the fall of 2026.
Okay, so I did attach, and you know, you probably have to copy paste some things. And if you had a chance, I hope to look at it before the meeting. If you didn't yet, please do so after the meeting. Make sure you do. But I attached the slideshow. So how did this come about? Discussions that came up internally among some stakeholders. Discussions came up from looking at what other schools around us are doing in the conference that we're in. And the slideshow really kind of lays all that out pretty well. So rather than me going through and trying to rephrase it all, if we get a chance to look at that slideshow on your own. But so what we did, and I'd say the process got a little bit slower start with the transition with a new athletic director this summer here. But we invited football parents and players, current grades 7 through 10, to come in and talk about whether this is a question worth considering, switching potentially from 11 player to 8 player, whether we want to consider this or not. So laid out some information. A lot of good discussion. Did a survey afterwards of everybody that was there, and then it was sent out and emailed out to all the football players and parents to get their feedback. The nice thing to see on the survey was people really felt like they had a chance to, ask questions and be heard at the meeting. A lot of good discussion, a lot of different points to consider. It's a very difficult question, and I don't think it's one that anybody wants to be considering. But the reason it comes up is looking ahead at our projected enrollments at our high school level with some of our small classes coming through is will our program continue to remain viable and competitive and so on when we have those small enrollment numbers dipping down into the 150s and so on as we're expecting them to do. So, and then the other part that's difficult with this is the timeline. So if it is, number one is, did we want to consider this question? And then number two, if we do want to, and if somehow we made that decision to do that, October 1st is the deadline to make a decision and let the WIAA know. And then October 1st of 24, puts you in the queue for the realignment process that happens in the 25-26 school year for the fall of 26 football seasons. So the decisions schools are making now about remaining 11-man or going to 8-man are for the fall of 2026, 2 years out. Because what the WIA does with football is they do a conference realignment every 2 years, and they base it on enrollment, because football is such a unique sport with numbers and driven by enrollment. And what they found is the difficulty in the last 10 years of trying to maintain conferences when there's so much movement with football all the time just made it difficult to keep other conferences in alignment and so on. So they've separated football out of the mix, as we know from our conversations about Dunn St. Croix last year. Football's out of the mix. So anyway, it's a difficult timeline. It's a difficult question. So at the meeting, what was shared is, here's some things to consider. And the question was asked at the meeting, well, okay, we're going to do a survey afterwards. And what if there's an overwhelming feeling among parents and players of one way or the other, then that's kind of where it goes. If it's kind of a mixed reaction, if it's kind of split, somebody said, well, what happens if the survey is divided? And, the answer was, well, then we need to keep talking about it. And I think what we found is, the survey was fairly divided. There were 38 people that responded to it when I sent out an email, or we sent out an email on Friday. And it is fairly divided. Some people who think it's a really bad idea, and some people who think it would be a good idea. So the plan, and at this point, is to have another meeting with parents on Tuesday, September 17th, at 5:30 after practice again, so that parents and players can be part of it. If they'd like to be, anyone would be welcome to come to that meeting. So the question, I just wanted to make sure the board was up to date on what the process has been, make sure that the board has access to the same data. See the slideshow that was shared. I did share with the board the confidential survey data with names removed and nothing to identify anybody who responded, but just so you can see some of the scores and so you can see some of the comments in there. And again, no names are attached in what was shared with the board. Just to see that for yourselves that it's a pretty mixed kind of response. And also then I guess the question for the board is just to discuss, does the board want the discussion to continue, or does the board want to shut down the discussion with parents and program, or what? So
Can we get a copy of the actual survey? Because the data for this doesn't make any sense if you don't know what 1 through 5 actually means.
Yeah, so the
Like,
question,
is one good or
the
one
question
bad?
was, do you think it's a terrible idea? 1, do you think it's a great idea?
5, okay.
Yep. Good question. Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, I looked at it, and it's 50/50.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very split, which is
Split.
which is
Well,
tough.
Really?
Makes it tough.
It's leaning a little more one way than the
Colored
other.
in, hold your thumb down.
I would say you have to keep
and just
talking.
color it in with your finger going across. Hold
Yeah,
your thumb.
it's
Like,
definitely
I don't
not a
think you shut
resounding
it down.
one. It's definitely not a resounding one way or
Double
the
click
other.
on it
When
with your
is
fingers.
that next meeting?
Then copy and paste.
So, the next parent meeting is Tuesday, September 17th, so a week from tomorrow.
So is that strictly parents, like now, maybe freshmen through?
So what we did is we invited the parents and kids who are currently 7th through 10th grade because they'd be affected. So like the current juniors and seniors will be graduated before
Right.
this happens. Not that they,
I'm wondering,
yeah,
future, like kids that maybe
Even younger.
3rd, 4th grade, them parents.
Or, well,
that
6th
might
and 5th.
impact them.
yeah. Well, and
You
that's
know, is it open to the district?
that's one of the questions people brought up is, okay, so if we go to 8-man and then in the future we want to switch back to 11, we certainly can.
It's not hard.
Right. It's the same thing. It's just you got to be looking ahead 2 years. So to say, because yeah, if we make a switch, if we did, it's not permanent. We can always switch back. So that's a good
I
question.
guess myself and Kate was fine, but I would like to go here if we're gonna ultimately come
Maybe it
to
makes sense.
discussions here.
Yeah, the board
here.
level.
Yeah, I would like to hear firsthand, just to see
Instead of where we're
people's
gonna be.
reaction.
Yep.
and 26.
What are you saying,
Okay.
Cory?
Oh, I would like to
You
go
know,
to
I
that
don't,
meeting.
but.
Oh, yeah, you should be able to.
You're set for 2
Yeah.
years.
And
Sure.
any other parent, even younger kids.
Yep.
So
Because
we
more
have
of
the
the
conversation
district
at
is involved.
26.
Yeah.
And then
So
when
my
we-
question is, Chris, how are we supposed to view this? We're gonna make the decision on that, the board's gonna make this decision, correct?
Well, that's, I guess what I'm putting to the board is to say, I think that it wasn't you know, if it was a resounding, like, everybody's saying 1s and 2s, then, okay, end of discussion, we're not gonna consider this. If everybody's saying 4s and 5s, like, okay, then everybody wants this, but clearly that's not the case. It's definitely more divided. So
Well,
then I think
exactly.
it's, yeah.
That being said, the board, us that are sitting here at this table, have a kind of a big decision to make on what direction
Right,
we're gonna go,
and-
because I fully anticipate that we're gonna have a mixed bag right to the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we need to be involved, we need to make sure that people are being heard and listened
Yeah.
to, and I think if we've got anything that we need to be spoken, that it needs to be spoken, because this is one of these decisions that's gonna
I think it
make
should
a lot
be
of
open
friends
to
for
public,
you.
To everybody.
Well, that's kind of what I'm like, do we elevate it to that level?
That's it.
My other question is,
To younger.
what about, when it comes to 8-man, what is the enrollment level, I guess, as far as, is there JV squads or C squads available in 8-man too?
That would be the goal, would be to, if
I mean, how many other teams out there have JVs and C squads?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there'd probably be a better chance that there would be, correct, Chris? Is that, because
One,
that's one of the...
one of the challenges right now that we're experiencing, is like the coaches will share if you ask them, is that, you know, we're playing 11-man and we struggle to put a JV team out there on Monday because, you know, we don't have a real deep team. So you've got challenges with putting a fairly thin JV team out there. I think the idea behind it would be is if we have a strong 8-player program, now you're able to put out a strong varsity team on Friday night and then also have a solid JV team on Monday night too, and kids are having opportunities that way in kind of the developmentally appropriate, where you got your freshmen, sophomores playing JV and your juniors and seniors playing varsity, you know, and not that system that you get when you're undersized and you're understaffed, or you know, undermanned, where you have fewer players, and now you've got sophomores playing up on varsity and freshmen playing up on varsity, which is, you know, not necessarily a sign of a healthy program usually, very much. So
So I wonder if there's a little bit of thought we could put into as to how we come to our decision. You know, do we put some different weights on some of the different, and I'll give you an example. The coaching staff, I think, would have some pretty important insight as to what direction we should go with our program. Are there any other stakeholders that you think maybe we invite them in for, you know, make sure that hopefully they're there for this meeting, so we can, you know, hear from or give voice to the people that have quite a bit of credence in the subject we have to talk about.
yeah,
Students first, you know?
I think the fact of, you know, like we said, the 10th through 7th grade was the demographic we're trying to go for, get the most input from, because they're going to be the ones impacted by it, you know. And what you're saying, go down even lower, 6th and 5th, could be too, you know.
Just looking at the enrollment over the next 8-9 years,
Yeah.
you might want to go a little lower. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think if we did go that route.
And you want people to be informed, you know, because it's, I know my reaction initially, you know, is, why would we want to go, you know, I would never, you know, I'm a former football coach. I've been following the Warrior football program, you know, for about 45 years in some fashion or another. And, you know, the initial reaction is typical is, no one wants to go to 8-man. You know, that's just kind of like, but it is coming back to that question, you know, like you guys are saying, it's a big decision, and I think when we look at big
Those
decisions.
6th graders are there's a lot of football players in the 6th grades.
Yeah, and it's
Lots.
Yeah, but the problem is if you have one group that's got a lot of numbers, the ones next to them have average numbers that come with smaller classes. And last year I watched 3 freshmen look like deer in headlights, and we're in danger of getting hurt out there.
Mhm.
I don't think that's from a safety standpoint. I don't think that's a good place to.
I think the other thing to remember too is there's always a lot of sixth graders, but we always graduate 7 to 10 seniors. You know, so out of a class, you don't hang on. You never hang on to those 20. You're going to lose some in 7th grade. You're going to lose some in 8th grade.
First time they get hit.
And that's a natural
It
progression
is.
in any football
Yes,
program.
absolutely.
That's just a
Any
natural
sport
progression,
whatsoever, you're not
particularly.
getting numbers.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a big decision and it's a tough decision, and you know, kind of go back. Big decisions go back to what our core values are. Students first, and opportunity and safety and high expectation. Those core values that and character. Those values that we say are our core values, and we gotta lean on those and think about that. Yeah, it's certainly an emotional issue, and it's certainly a divided issue. It's difficult to have to consider this, I would say. Not anything anybody really wants to consider, I think, but.
That's why we get paid the big bucks, people.
Right.
So this year, I know we haven't come out with official pupil counts yet, but how do you think we're doing this year
So we
compared
decide now,
to?
or we decide
Compared to-
to go in effect there?
Compared to what we thought we'd get, as far as pupil counts.
Enrollment numbers in this building,
Yeah.
or overall,
It affects here.
pretty close to where we
Make a decision
predicted to be.
here.
There's
Yeah.
nothing.
Here and beyond.
Gained a few, lost a few.
Yeah, I don't
So we're
even.
like holding steady.
When they show up in this building, they're always a sophomore, because that's our biggest class, and we just keep adding them there. And for some reason, that has happened
Yeah.
3 years in a row, I think. Mr. Crawford can attest to that as he tries to fit 33 in a room.
Yeah, we haven't had like a major influx or a major departure or anything. We haven't even done our third Friday count yet, so we know how many kids are in the rooms, but I couldn't spout it off right now. I can't say off the top of my head. But.
So I feel like where we landed is that whole other parent-player open meeting needing to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the 17th, and that was that hasn't even been publicized yet till I said it all out here. But that was Mr. Rosine. I had asked him to talk to the coaches to say, hey, what's another good date to meet after practice? And they felt like that Tuesday the 17th would be a good time.
38 surveys.
There was, we got 38 responses, which is actually, that doesn't sound much, but it's actually a decent response. People don't respond to surveys always,
Yeah.
but we had a really nice turnout at the meeting. I mean, it was a good turnout.
So usually those who don't respond are probably right in the middle. Not really too worried one way or the other.
Perhaps. There's a lot of thoughtful conversation. I mean, I was really proud of the conversation that people had, and you guys review the comments in there. There's a lot of thoughtful comments in there on both sides. But I guess the point of bringing it up tonight was just to openly discuss process, and I don't know, anything else? Am I missing anything, Mr. Melberg? Anything I'm missing or add to?
A lot to talk about in 3 weeks.
I know, that's tough.
That's the.
From August, basically only had a month, and it's not ideal, because I would have loved to talk about this for 6 months instead. It would have been easier and better to involve more people. Not that I would like to talk about it, but maybe better to have more time to let people ruminate on it more and get more information and discuss more, but.
Well, then you're going to publicize the 17th, and we'll go from there. Chris?
Yeah, and I guess to the board, I mean, definitely emailing directly to those football parents and football players, but also everyone's welcome. But it wasn't something that, a general public meeting, I understand the value of that, but I also understand that the people who might show up to that don't necessarily have a stake in the outcome so much as these kids and these parents do. These kids are going to be the ones playing, and these parents are going to be the ones with their kids out there. And I do think that voice needs to be and the coaches, like you said, Greg, is a great point. I think those need to be the voices with the most weight behind them.
Yeah, and that's why I bring that up. That's our decision to listen to those voices, and we'll do fine.
Yeah. So.
All right. then let's move on to our next item of business, which is the approval of the 24-25 District Emergency Procedures Manual.
Okay, so there are no changes. We review this every year. We share this with the board every year. We did a decent review of it last year, some revisions to it last year. We really didn't change anything this year other than some names and updating names and stuff like that on the quick reference and phone calls and so on. But it's important that we make a point to review it. It's important we put it on a board agenda. The Department of Justice, every year I'm required to file a report with them, and they want to see that we've approved it and discussed it at the board level. The administrators during in-service, they make a point to review and particularly the high points of especially high need things that they review with the staff. And then we also will be having here in the first couple weeks of September, we do our emergency drills. That will be, severe weather, fire, and a hold drill. So
then I will entertain a motion.
I have one question. Are we still only able to do broad announcements from the offices? Did that ever change?
that is what the current technology is. Yep. Yep. But that's something we can look at with.
We can do it from any phone if you have the right number.
In this building.
In this building.
In this building.
Any phone in the building. Any
Okay.
landline in the building, we can make an announcement.
To everybody, so you could do a lockdown from Mr. Crawford's class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
If you have the right key code to punch in.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and second to approve the 24-25 District Emergency Procedures Manual. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Next item of business is consideration/approval of designating school buildings as emergency disaster shelter with Polk County's Community Service Division.
Okay, so last week, it was during open house day, some members of the 4 or 5 members of the community services team from Polk County came and just had a check-in. Did this last year as well, which was nice. Outreach to school districts around the county and just kind of check in on the services that they provide and just make connecting faces with names and so on. And one of the things that came up was asking us whether we would consider our school buildings as a disaster shelter. You know, if let's say a tornado ripped through town and a number of people were, made homeless, or we had the National Guard on site perhaps helping with flood relief or, disaster relief. So for example, maybe allowing the National Guard to stay in our gyms and then sleep there, or if we had a massive amount of people who were made homeless by a disaster, opening up our school to provide relief. If that's something that we would consider. And I think that, being a big part of the community and the center of our community, I think it's something that we definitely want to consider. They had sent their memorandum of understanding, which I had attached for you. And, I looked through it, there is some responsibility or some investment on our part in terms of if it were to happen. We'd be required to certainly have personnel on site, and they would, walk through and do a condition of the facility report with us, and then there's a whole section in there about even food services if that became part of, maybe we had a massive power outage in the area, or again, housing a number of people here that need to be fed, if we would use our food facilities for that and how that would be coordinated. Custodial services, certainly, if you got people using this shelter. So there's, as far as reimbursement goes, if it becomes a federally declared disaster, then you apply for FEMA relief and you can get paid for those kind of things. As I'm understanding, the Community Services Division can also pay for some of the reimbursement, probably at a smaller level. So, is there some risk in doing this? I think there's a little bit of risk to the district, potentially that it could cost us some money. But I also, personally, I think if our community was in a severe disaster situation, I can't imagine that we wouldn't. I don't know, this is me speaking on behalf. I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone else in the room, but
the community owns this building.
I can't imagine we wouldn't
It's just.
open our doors, you know?
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't, so
So,
I'm for it.
I don't know what questions you might have or concerns you might have.
What would the definition of disaster be?
You know, that's a good question. I know that some of it gets defined by, like I know, I think, because Unity School did this a few years ago when they had the tornadoes go through that area. And I don't know if it was the county or it might have been the governor that declared a disaster area. And then that brought some of those resources in. It would be them coming to us requesting it.
So we would okay it at that for each instance?
I think so.
probably.
That's how I understand it. Yeah. Somebody's got to let them in the door, so I guess we would ultimately have the opportunity to say yes or no at the end. But
As long as I think, and I can't even foresee how, what, when, or where, but after going through the COVID thing, I just don't really like to give all of our things away. So
I could have our attorney look at it too. If
I think
you
it's
guys
good.
think that's a good idea. So.
yeah, and then if that's the case, if we have the levity to make decisions yet, then by all means we want to help out, right? So Chris, go ahead and go down those. If you guys are okay with it, let Chris handle it. He can let us know how it turns out.
Would you like me to bring it back to the next meeting then, rather than have me act without coming back to the board?
I suppose, I guess.
Bring it back in October.
Yeah. Up to the lawyer.
There's no rush. There's
Yeah.
no rush on this, I don't think. So,
Okay.
okay. All right. Good.
Then the next item of business is consideration / approval of Association for Equity and Funding membership.
So if you've had a chance to review what I sent you, and then a couple meetings ago I left some paper copies of some of their materials here. I wouldn't normally bring, I don't normally bring this kind of stuff forward to the board. Association for Equity and Funding they're truly act in a nonpartisan way, but they are advocates for school funding in Madison, and particularly for low-funded schools that have a lower dollars per student, revenue limit, which Clear Lake has been in for a long time until we passed the referendum, boosted us up quite a bit, and but we're still. We're not. There are districts around the state that have almost double revenue per student of what we have. They're few, but so I've been impressed with their approach. I've heard their I don't know what his title is, their director, or I don't know exactly what his title is, speak to different constituent groups, whether it's superintendent groups or conferences or so on, and their approach has been rather effective. Rather than simply say constantly, well, we just need more money, we need more money. They are specific strategies about closing the funding gap between, you have districts that, let's say they get $19,000 revenue limit per student, and then districts, so that we were one of those districts at the low revenue limit ceiling, which is the base minimum, which was $10,000 per student, and basically trying to close that gap. Now, we beat it by a year when we passed the referendum. Our referendum moved us from $10,000 per student to just over $11,000 per student. That was a huge, huge change for us. But now, in the last biennium, this group successfully lobbied and I think made a good case with the research and the data with legislators from both sides of the aisle to show that disparity was really unjust. And in the last biennium, they raised that low revenue threshold from $10,000 to $11,350. So $1,350 over the biennium. That's a huge increase. So basically, kind of caught everybody up to what our referendum did. We're like a year ahead. We're like $350 above that. We're in the 11,600 some. So what their goal is for the next biennium is also to close that gap even more. And their research, if you look through the materials I gave you, would show that if they can do that, they would have a high percentage of the districts across the state, all within a reasonable amount of each other, which brings more fairness, I guess, is what they're going for. So, and if you looked through the materials, there was one of the pages had maps on it, and it showed the different levels of funding across the state, district by district, and how they dramatically decreased the disparity there. So again, I'm not trying to oversell it, but I'm also just.
I got to see these guys present too.
I think their approach is different.
At the School Board Association deal, and yeah, I was impressed.
That sounds like a motion to me.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve us joining the Association for Equity and Funding membership. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is consideration/approval of compensation for district teachers for teaching community ed courses.
Okay, so we heard from Wendy earlier tonight about community ed, and so some of the courses I think would make sense for some of our district teachers to teach. You know, let's say Mr. Larson wanted to teach a class in the tech ed area, and so the question was, well, how much would they get paid? Would they get paid? They would want to get paid. And so the number we talked about was $24 per hour. That's the same dollar amount that they get paid for summer school. And it's the same dollar amount they get paid for like extra curriculum work if it's hours outside of school. So that's what I would suggest. And also understand this wouldn't cost the district anything because it would be paid for by the user fee. So when people sign up for a class, they pay for the cost of materials and they pay for the cost of the instructor. So it's not any money out of pocket for the district. It's just setting a value, say, hey, if you teach a class, here's how much you're going to get paid. So
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to improve the compensation for district teachers for teaching community education courses at $24 an hour.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is the review of the start of the school year.
just wanted to give our administrators a quick opportunity to just kind of give a quick few highlights of the start of the first week of school and in service.
I'm going to go first this time. Okay. Well, first of all, it's amazing how quickly you get back and you're in the flow of things, like you never quit. So, which maybe is the case here. I don't know if it's the case when the alarm clock goes off at home, but we're off and running. I just very thankful to the staff that we have in the building. We have a great mix of veteran staff who just take charge and do things that they've always done, and we appreciate them very much. And also, if you remember last year, we had a lot of brand new staff in this building, and it was a lot of fun last week and today to see that there's no tougher year than your first year of teaching, and then to watch them in their second year and some of the self-reflection they've done and changes that they've made to do things better. It really is fun to watch the growth in the educators as well. A couple of highlights last week. During wrap time, we started and we'll complete this year. Because of the strategic plan, our goal is 100% of our kids will fill out an academic goal sheet. And so we've got kids defining right now, last week and this week, what their goals are for this school year academically. And if you saw I sent a letter out to our adjustment to parent-teacher conferences. We want to have those at parent-teacher conferences, and we want that to lead the conversation with parent and child about what their academic goals are and where they want to get to after they graduate. And that conversation looks different with seniors than it does with 7th graders, but something that we'll do continuously and kind of grow that conversation as we go. So we're excited about that work. I think it's going to lead to some really good discussions, and also kind of fills in some areas with our academic career planning that we're really striving to hit some goals with this year with the strategic plan. And then starting already tomorrow is we are doing our first round of CERT and FastBridge testing. So I'm excited. The kids are not, but I'll sell them on it in the morning, and we'll get that process started, and we'll have our data points to start working towards our goals this year. So.
Reiterate a lot of what Mr. Melber says about the staff that we have here in Clear Lake. Dedication, second to none, honestly. Teachers in throughout much of the summer, just begging to make sure those floors are waxed so they could get in and get ready for kids. So it's really exciting to see their excitement for getting ready for the students. And then we did start with our open house. Some of you were there, 30 plus organizations in the Commons area, which was really well received, and just a nice way to get kids in the building and kind of hopefully relieve some of those first day jitters for teachers and students. We did peel off some little JK kiddos from their parents and have that daily thing, and then I here at the grocery store the other day, over the weekend, that one little Jake here was sad. Saturday was not a school day. So they're already kind of getting back into a routine from our littlest to me sending off 2 seniors this year. And it really takes from the board to the teaching staff to our bus drivers, support staff, kitchen. I mean, honestly, it's hard to believe for the elementary we're in day 4 because it just is really starting to already feel like we didn't miss a beat. So thank you, thank you.
All right, well, thank you for that, you guys. The next item of business then is discussion of the board retreat for professional development, September 23.
Okay, so just a reminder of that, we're going to have our normal time of 5:30, and this will be the 3rd year in a row now that we've done a retreat for professional development here at the end of September, which is exciting. And this time we're bringing in Erin Bellargin, who is a consultant from CLSD to talk about trauma-informed schools and trauma-informed education, which builds off of what we talked about at our June retreat, back earlier this summer. She spoke to the staffs during August in-service, did an excellent job, she's very well informed and really knows her stuff in this area. So she'll come in for an hour and a half and present with the board, and time for Q&A and discussion as well. So.
What time is that meeting?
So 5:30, we'll start at our normal time.
Okay.
Now, I want to come back to this. So we talked about the 8-player discussion too. If the board is going to have a final voice in this, then I think we would need to have, we'd need to that night create a meeting agenda and have an actual open meeting that we post, and then have an agenda with, that may be the only item on it, which makes for a unique meeting, but that might be something we do afterwards at 7 o'clock or something like that, when it's all over. So that would be our opportunity. I think when we'd have everybody together, we could post an actual meeting.
Go ahead and do that, Chris.
Is it better to do that first in case community people want to be here for open session?
Well,
if we're voting on it?
Yeah, because I guess if we invite people, the open meeting would be at 7, and people would come at 7.
Right.
Yeah.
If we did it afterwards rather than before.
If we did it before, we do it. I mean, we could do it at 5:30 and do that part first, and have Erin. I could see if Erin could come a little bit later.
Is she a preconceived time? I just want to make sure we're done with her.
Yeah, she said I can double check with her. Okay. I'll do that. I'll tell her, like, hey, we got a kind of a time. She said about an hour. Okay. I figure a little Q&A afterwards too. So we could just try to be disciplined and keep it to that time.
You'll have to kind of try to figure out how long that meeting will be. We'll have some public comments probably during that meeting. So
yeah,
I guess what I would encourage is maybe doing that meeting after
the retreat.
Yeah. Then we wouldn't be time crunched for anything.
Pushing her late or something like that. That's kind of what I was thinking a little bit too. We could do it on a different night too, but I think as long as everyone's here, probably better to do it.
Yeah, we must
do it in one night.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Showering water. All right, next item of business is Chris Peterson, Mr. Chris Peterson's District Administrator notes.
Keep it real brief because we've heard a lot about the start of the school year already. I don't need to repeat what the principal said, but I just, I got to thank everybody as well. And then also, it's exciting now this time of year, the networking and professional development starts up in earnest again. So we'll have our superintendent networks, our principal networks, our athletic director networks get going again and connecting with our other fellow schools around the area. That's always a good time to just make those connections and learn from each other. And then I'll be going to the WASDA Fall Conference at the end of September, the 25th through 23rd. But we've had some, we've got student activities rolling already with sports and marching band, at parades, and homecoming preparations going on. Mr. Crawford's here, ringleader behind all that. We got in the business office DPI reports, several of them that get done here in September too. So lots going on, and I want to thank everybody for just a really positive and smooth start to the year. That's all I got.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you. The next item of business is are contemplating closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paragraph 1C. Thank you, Mr. Clifford.
Yep.
The board will be discussing staffing and staff compensations. I will pull the board. Nettie?
Yes.
Corey? Myself, yes. Christie?
Yes.
And Matthew?
Yes.
All right. We will and are in closed session.
There might still be
Okay,
time.
all right, back in open session. I will entertain, or future agenda items. Anybody have anything they want to put on a future agenda?
Yeah, you know, I've been on the board for almost 3 years now, and I just think that we haven't heard much about career tech ed, and I'd like to somehow, over the next couple agendas or whatever, if we could get a little bit more information about how that program's going. And you know, we have a scorecard, you know, for a lot of things, you know, when it comes to English and math and all those things, but you know, it's one of those things that just doesn't seem to be on the radar, and it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about that stuff.
Could we do a
I can-
spotlight in education from like Mrs. Hunter, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Larson? I mean,
Well, and we'll be, pillar 1, engagement, CTE and Zello, that'll be career planning, October 14th. So that's one right there.
There's academic career planning goals in the strategic plan, so absolutely.
We'll be hitting on that regularly.
Yep.
Because we
Good,
know
man.
that's an area that has not been talked about enough, probably.
Yep.
How about even kids that are taking potential college credit courses? Are they passing them? Are they getting their college credits? How can we see how our kids are doing on that to,
with the
That-
start college now.
yeah, so we can
Yep.
show parents what beneficial that is. And I can say, I have a daughter that is skipping a semester of college because of what she earned in high
How
school.
much are we even utilizing it? You know,
That's a lot of money.
You writing all this down, Mr. Milberg?
Well, we have a specific goal rate on that we're going to increase the number of kids using those options by, I think it's 6%.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, yes, that goal is on there, and the CTE PLC has got, they're running with everything you're talking about right now, because you're absolutely right. The ACP, we need to revitalize it, and they're working on that right now.
Yeah.
And so that group is helping me a ton to get those things rolling. So it's in the plans.
Good, Matt, good. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right.
All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.